Payments, cha-ching. What is a business if you don't collect cash? So Timothy Hughes is not here. I'm going to quote him. That's what he works in Agoda. So this is what he says. I have a history at this event saying that every travel company needs to be or should be a fintech company. And I used to say that Agoda was an accidental fintech company. But no more. Agoda is now a deliberate fintech company. So we all need to pay attention to fintech, and it's very important. As Agoda is a platform, there are two groups of people. Consumers who wants to pay you, and also suppliers who wants to be paid. And to control this process is very important, because if you don't pay attention to this process, three things will happen. First, your consumers that want to pay you in their preferred method, and you don't accept that, you lose sales. And timing of payment is important. If you pay too fast to your suppliers, cash flow problem. And if you pay too much to the merchant fees, and we are already in travel business where the margins is so low, that 2-3% is actually very huge to us. So without further ado, I have a fantastic panel with me, and we're going to deep dive into payments and fintech. So you guys have 30 seconds to a minute to talk about what you do and what your company does, and how does payment affect your company. Let's start with Paulina.
Hi, I'm Paulina. I run Glyde Payments. We're the fintech vertical of TLG, which is part of Travel Start. So you saw Stefan on earlier panels. We are so committed to payments that we actually started issuing our own cards and built our own core banking platform. So we own the full issuing process end to end. So we went through all the regulatory approvals, and our primary focus is to issue virtual cards for supplier payments in Africa.
Hi.
SheueChee.
Yes. So I'm Chee. Last year I was here as well, representing JP Morgan, and this year I am with Uber, heading the payments for Uber. So payment is like a bloodline in Uber. So we have to collect all the payments from the consumers, and we have to pay drivers and also the merchants as well. So I take care of the money movements for Ubers in APAC, except Southeast Asia and China.
Joff?
Oh, okay.
Oh, sorry. Joff.
Okay, no problem. Hi, good afternoon, everybody. My name's Joff Romoff. I'm with IHG Hotels Resorts here in Southeast Asia, and I've got responsibility for the region. We are not a payment company per se, obviously. We operate 120 hotels in the region, and as we have started to evolve within this region and our growth has accelerated, obviously payment has become a major part of it. And we continue to go down that journey based on the country that we're in, the hotels that we're working with, and the people that are purchasing. But we'll talk about a bit of that later. Thanks.
Shabab?
Hi, I'm Shabab. I'm with Vesta. Vesta is a decision platform that does clone wars every day. We make sure that merchants like yourself who are accepting payments are making sure that you're accepting more good actors versus bad actors and not incurring fraud. And our mission is really to ensure that three things happen when you use a technology like ours. Is one, you're increasing your revenue by approving more good actors. Number two, you're doing it very efficiently, so it's not as high cost. And the third one is customer experience. You're not doing it with a lot of friction through the customer journey.
It's a great panel. We have payment gateway, making it happen. We have a platform, and we have a fraud prevention, and we have an operator. We're going to ask you questions. Do you accept digital wallets at some point of time, right? So let's start the scene off by having some trends, right? Let's take a look at some of the trends that we are seeing. Okay, if you look at this screen on your right and your left, you can see that digital payments, right? For e-commerce, the first line is e-commerce. In 2018, it's 12%. It has shot up to 36%. In point of sales, physical point of sales, it used to be all cash. Cash is king, right? In 2018, 3% is only using digital payments. The rest are using cash. But fast forward to 2026, we're expecting a 30%. So now the question is, why post-COVID we have such a huge adoption of digital payments? Maybe we can start with Chee.
In fact, when we always look at what is the competitor of payments, I'll say cash is the competitor, because digital payment and cash, right? Yeah, and cash is always much more expensive if we are to handle cash day in, day out versus a digital payment. So before I want to go there, of course, COVID is one of the key motivator of all this shoot up of the digital payments, and also cost itself, infrastructure and cost. So we are talking about digital wallets. Everyone is talking about digital wallet. For Uber, we are moving $200 billion worldwide, and imagine we're paying 3% of fees. That is actually a $3 billion of fees for payment cost fee that we are paying. And digital wallets actually is one of the salvage for us, because having digital wallets, say, for example, like Alipay, WeChat Pay, they will create competitors into Visa, MasterCards, and other digital payments as well. And with competitions, we'll be able to drive down the cost of payments, especially we're talking about the thin margin that we earlier on CCU mentioned. That is another drivers why digital wallets come into play. And the third one, where everybody will be saying, is millennials. They really like digital wallets, and all these VCs fundings and all that, they're just booming marketing acquisitions on the customers. It has also attracted lots and lots of digital wallets adoptions among the millennial and the Gen Z, where people who doesn't have credit cards. So of all these COVID and then cost of payments and then the adoptions of all these young people, they prefer to use digital wallets, where there are lots of innovations going around with these digital wallets. For example, Grab Pay, they actually have gamifications, right? I'll just play a game. If you use Grab Pay, I'm going to earn some points. So those are the all the factors that drive digital payments.
So it's gamification, ease of use, and your consumers want it. That's what you are saying as well. But of course, as a merchant itself, we are happy with the low cost. I think that's one key of it as well, right? But to make things more confusing, we talk about digital wallets, and there are people like Google Pay, Apple Pay. They have no wallets, but yet they are digital wallets, right? So Timothy Hughes has a way to call them. They decided to call Google Pay and Apple Pay or Alipay as payment gatekeepers. So we have a new word today, payment gatekeepers. So Joff, what do you think about this kind of payment gatekeepers like Google Pay, Apple Pay?
I'm not opposed to them. I think in terms of, from our perspective, what we look at is how a consumer wants to consume. And so when I look at various markets, that's what we're really sort of titled with. And really what it comes down to from there is, what are they consuming? We have 17 different brands operating in the region. So somebody who is consuming at a higher end brand is probably not going to participate as heavily into a digital wallet as somebody consuming at a lower end brand. So we're all in favor of them, provided it's giving the ability of the end customer to transact with us. So I guess we're probably Switzerland a little bit, and it's just really our ability to consume those various payment methods that will allow us to drive the customer. Because at the end of the day, that's what we're trying to do.
Paulina, comes to you, right? Mm-hmm. Between the closed loop Google Pay, Apple Pay, are they your enemies or your friends, right, as an issuer?
Well, I mean, wallets, it depends on who's issuing the wallet, right? So you've got wallets which are issued by banks, and those are usually issued in markets that have a very established banking infrastructure in Africa. And then you have markets that have no banking infrastructure, and usually you have third parties issuing those wallets like telcos, etc. So the banking infrastructure wallets are usually backed by cards, etc. And those are the ones that usually power Apple Pay, Google Pay, etc. And those, the nice things about those is that it supports a lot of interoperability. The other side of things is the third-party issued wallets, and those are actually the majority in Africa. For example, M-Pesa, etc., which has about 40 million customers. They're one of the big success stories in terms of wallets in Africa. They started in 2007, and they only really started supporting interoperability between networks in 2022. So it just shows you how much lag there was. And one of the big problems with those third-party wallets as well is how do you not only interoperability, but how do you withdraw those funds? And if you do support withdrawal, it allows that wallet to then start, depending on the market you're in, start like tracing into the Banking Act. And that creates a whole bunch of other regulatory issues, etc. So the answer is, we are part of Apple Pay and Google Pay because they use us. So we're actually currently getting through MDES certification which is a nightmare. I don't know if anyone's done it. It's a complete nightmare. But it's part of the process for us to get certified to be enabled on those wallets. So we love them. That's great. It's a form of payment. It's an acceptance tool. The competitors are more the third-party wallets, which are slowly going to kind of just die over time, in my view.
So that's why we have an expert telling us all this thing, because it's so complex. So if you want to talk about payment and all this thing, you just need to leave it to the expert to do it. So coming back as a layman consumer using, I'm going to go back to you, Joff, on this, right? Do you accept digital wallets in all your hotels?
Not in all of them, sadly speaking. With us, obviously, we're not a fintech company by birth, that's for sure. And our technical stack has to evolve. We do accept it in markets like China, where it's a bit more closed. It's a lot easier for us to do. Again, if I look at markets, we will virtually have to have every digital wallet there is in the region to be able to sort of drive greater adoption. So we're looking at markets in isolation, obviously, where we have the greatest amount of demand for it. Case in point, Indonesia minus Bali, I think credit card penetration there is about 8%, 9%, but the digital wallet penetration is huge. So, we've got a population of 200 plus million. We operate hotels that are at the, we call them upscale level, other people call it the budget level. So that's sort of a nice fit that sits there. So from a country by country view, we are evaluating them, but unfortunately we just can't do it for every country we operate, and it's not feasible for us.
Yeah, so from a sales perspective, I think everybody wants to accept digital payments, especially when the credit card penetration in some countries are very low. And I think it's always to convince the finance to use advanced payment gateway methods to accept all sort of payments that it is, right? So I'm going to go to another huge topic that actually affect us a lot, frauds. Credit card frauds. That is really, really, really huge, right? I think every single tech company or travel company is affected by it. Shabab, tell us about fraud. How can you help us to prevent fraud? This morning we talk about AI. Is AI going to get rid of fraud?
Lower it, but not get rid of it. So I would say if you think about fraud, you have to first start from who the fraudsters are. So, 10 years ago, 15 years ago, the fraudsters were the typical basement, hoodie, hacking. Today, they're extremely sophisticated. So they are, folks just like us. They have conferences like this. They have panel discussions, and they share information. And the goal for them is, they have families. And
maybe it's an idea for WiT to have a hacko, a conference for hackos.
Yeah, but that's the type of, organizations, individuals, either you're global, regional, you're fighting against, right? So, and they're using very sophisticated tech to monetize the platforms that you guys have, and they know exactly what to do and how to do it to compromise and effectively maximize their revenue from you. And you talked about cost. That's a lot of cost if you're going to be losing to fraud. Can AI and machine learning and methodologies and platforms do that? Absolutely. So on the other side, as I said, there's this clone wars going on every day, good and bad, good and bad. There are folks that are using the same tech stack to help prevent it. And the idea is prevention. You're never going to zero it out because they're really good at getting around the guardrails. But the AI and the machine that's available today, the tech that's available today, can significantly reduce it.
Do you have some data and numbers to say what are in every company, what's a fraud number, or globally, what's a fraud number like, and how low can you reduce it to?
Well, listen, there is no magic number, sadly. But at industry level, you can bring it down 1,000 basis points to where you start. If you have the right tech and you detect it in the right way with all the right information feeding into a platform to help you make that decision. Now, travel and hospitality, depending on where you are, domestic, cross-border, you could have fraud as high as 3 percentage points of your total sales to as low as 5 basis points of your total sales. So it depends. It's a wide range, but it all depends on how you manage that process.
Does Uber have make use of third-party fraud prevention?
So Uber is known for built in-house. So, but because of changes, right? I mean, and like fraudsters and all that. So we always debate: should we build, or should we buy, or should we partner? And recently, it's a lot of partnerships going on with companies like Vesta and fraud companies and all that. We also build and we partner. What we want to say is, what I would like to actually share is, in terms, if you're merchants, your OTA or hotels, fraud, like what Google, one of my head of payments from Google says, like, it is your husband taking a picture of your wife, right? You can never get it right, never. It is always something somewhere will go wrong. So fraud and customer friction is the same, right? You always have to find a balance between the both, and that is what we always joke about, like a husband taking a wife's photo. You can never get it right.
Just a quick one. Do you see that digital wallet payments fraud is a lot lower than credit card?
I would say yes and no, because for credit cards, the ticket size is a lot more bigger. And then for digital wallet, the ticket size is smaller. And then also for digital wallets, there are quite a lot of authentications happening with the device itself, and the exposure itself is a lot lower. So in terms of volume itself, I would say credit cards fraud will be much higher than the digital wallet. Yes, to answer your questions.
Okay, so go on to another question. Installment, the huge on buy now, pay later. Paulina, do you believe in it?
Yeah, of course. I mean, interest rates are going up. There's a credit crunch. Consumers are going to want access to funding. And alternative forms of funding is going to become more and more prevalent. The problem is buy now, pay later is not regulated. And, it doesn't really fall through, national credit acts. So it kind of is an alternative lending stream, which opens it up to making it a lot more riskier. But yeah, it's here to stay. And I think, specifically in travel, I think it definitely has a place.
So, quick one. Do you agree? Buy now, pay later?
Not for Uber, but I do believe, and we do see statistics that it is weird, right? I mean, it's a birthday party. I buy now and pay later. It's kind of weird. I need to write buy now, pay later. It's quite weird. But if you would like to please your girlfriend, order a limousine, then maybe you can buy now, pay later. But after that, we did the experiment, and it wasn't a yes for me. Yeah.
No, if you have to pay for your installments, your bride in installments, you should be walking. Yeah, I agree. Yeah.
Shabab, do you think buy now, pay later will reduce fraud?
Fraud, probably not, because people will gain wherever they can. But what I would say is buy now, pay later, to Paulina's point, I think is here to stay. It just depends on where you target the segment, because today the audience is very much, college students or middle income, and they over leverage themselves, and hence you have this problem. Depending on where you target, it definitely has a play in the travel space, again, to repeat customers, to build better experiences, and so forth and so on. So it depends on where you target, there's a play.
We definitely see it, especially in this part of the world. We've got a lot of pretty amazing resorts. Case in mind, we see it a lot in the Maldives. We see it a lot in Koh Samui. And I think you hit the nail on the head in terms of the marketplace that's going after. It's also geographically driven. As an example, a German consumer will not borrow. A British consumer will borrow every day. An American consumer will borrow. And so, we see a lot of people living way beyond their means, and to your point, trying to woo significant others in very beautiful places until they get home and they've got a $30,000 bill that they're going to have to pay for the next couple of years. So we're happy to take the money, don't get me wrong, but I do think it's here to stay, but I think we're going to get to a point where or people are just going to over-leverage themselves.
I would like to add, when I was in JP Morgan, when we're working with the OTA, we really do see the statistics of buy now, pay later increase the average ticket size.
Okay, that's interesting. Okay, another one. 2% merchant fees, are we able to lower down? Are we able to lower down the 2% merchant fees?
Absolutely, 100%. And I say this as an issuer. So, firstly, just random stat, $200, if you're transferring that internationally, that costs 6.9%. That's average globally. Actually, just transferring funds anywhere is a nightmare in terms of how much you pay for it. When it comes to merchant acquiring specifically, 2%, 100%, we can get rid of it. It's just a matter of time. And, I know blockchain is like a bad word and like no one's allowed to mention it. We're all talking AI, but it's like become this like dirty thing. I don't know what's... But, you can make a transfer on that with cents. Like cents. It is the future. It's going to happen. And honestly, merchant fees are going to go down more and more and more. And unfortunately, that has a ripple effect on wallets because already most wallets run at a loss. So, during the crazy days of lots of funding, everyone was like, yay, lots of money. And now the VCs are coming, okay, so when you're going to have a return? It's like... Didn't know that was a thing. Unfortunately, it's, a lot of them are now looking ways to monetize and find additional funding because, those fees are getting lower and lower. And ultimately that's good for merchants. It's good for everyone because... So it's a yes. It's a long yes.
So if you are having more than 2%, go back to your payment gateway and negotiate down the price to below 2%.
Just look at different payment methods. Look at off-rail transactions, etc. Incentivize your customers to use alternative forms of payment. We focus on B2B payments, so we're not really worried about that. You can take money from your customers everywhere. We focus on how you pay your suppliers, and that's still nice and chubby. So, yeah.
So we're going to move into something a little bit more cool, right? We call it the consumer fintech, right? Or some people nickname as a Hoppo tech, right? Using fintech products to modify what you're offering to a customer. For example, non-cancelable hotels or non-cancelable tickets. Now with fintech, with financial products put on top of it, and suddenly all your products can be cancelable, right? With just buying the insurance risk. And also the Hoppo talks about price freezing and things like that, right? Do you think that this fintech kind of products is going to stick with our travel industry as a whole? Maybe we start with Shahab.
I think so because part of those, they were born out of need, right? COVID was the driver of it. So even in when I was in the US 2 weeks ago, Delta would allow you to cancel your flights and move it around in the app without any fees, which is kind of crazy. But they do that now is because there's a need for it, right? It's become kind of behavior. So I believe, personal opinion, it's not the answer. It will be here, and more products like that will become mainstream because the consumer will demand it. And I think it's the right way to go.
So I come back to Paulina. What kind of product are you going to create for our audience here?
What kind of product?
What kind of fintech product are you going to
Well, I already
create?
have one. So maybe we just get adoption of that one first. But if I could think of one that I would want to, I'd like to get rid of Swift. Anyone who's made... What I find so fascinating is that in today's world, on Uber Eats, you order a pizza. I know when the pizza's being made. I know when the driver is about to approach the pizza delivery place. I know when he's picking it up, and I know his exact route to bring it to me. Transfer $200,000 overseas, and the money's gone for 2 weeks. And you have no idea where it is. No one knows. It's in the ether, and then you're like, okay. So that would be nice to kind of be able to track that. So if I could move into another form that I'd be looking for another product, that would be one I would solve for.
Okay, we'll be keeping a lookout for your product, for that product to come about. So, interestingly, a lot of payment gateways wants to come into our travel industry, right? I'll just give you a few examples. Hopper is now powering Capital One. Agoda is powering Citibank. And JP Morgan has announced some plans to come into the travel industry as well. And just as of last week, I think Yitu Travel Technology, a digital operation firm focused on air and rail travel, has been invested by Alipay, a billion renminbi. So, Chee, since your last life in JP Morgan, why are you guys so interested in travel industry?
Because they don't understand consumer like you all do, right? Yeah, that is the money, where the real money comes from, and transacting and payments is always volumes. So, because all the travels companies, you are so close to the customers, and that is where the money is. Talking about the product that we were talking about, so in this 2% or 3%, we need to know like where is this 2% and 3% goes to. It goes to the issuer, right? So when it goes to the issuer, as a merchant, if you are OTA, like Agoda, and we talked about that last year, is just tag on that, leverage on that 2%, and you become a buyer. You don't have to become just a seller, right? Or a seller of receiving money. If you are holding it like Uber, we are issuing the cards for our driver. They can then use the cards, and they are within our ecosystem. That is one of the products that we can bring down the cost of 2%, and in fact, you can even make money from there. So that is why financial companies like JP Morgan, like gateways and all that, they want to tag along and leverage. But I don't think like they will come in and kill the travel companies or the travel industry. It has to be a partnership, in my opinion. Yeah, because you need their licensing, you need the regulations when you're moving the money, but they need your customers. Yeah.
Partnership like working together, or partnership by acquiring?
Working together.
Do you think there is a chance that one of these payment gateways, they're banks, they're giant, right? Would you envision one day they will just acquire somebody in travel?
I think they will then sway away from their core business. Take example, Grab Finance, right? They are becoming a fintech, but at the same time, they are not really a fintech. They are still a delivery and ride-sharing company. So if it is too much of focus going into payments where you're not really strong at, then you will forget what is your core business. Yeah.
Maybe going back to Shabab, would you ever consider to invest in a travel company?
Invest in a travel company? I'll have to think about it.
You'll be helping people to prevent fraud, right? Why don't you just...
Yeah. No, beyond fraud. I think just to kind of ride on that comment, I would say that when you're having partnerships like that, it's actually beneficial for the customer. Because if you think about who the customer is and where they are transacting and the source of fund, it usually starts from the bank. So if you're a bank and you're partnering with a platform that offers inventory and experiences, and you tie the two together, and you have a captive audience that's logging into their bank account daily, you get a lot of benefit for the customer side, both from cost as well as experience, and also the availability, and also from the platform side, because they're getting these sticky customers come through. So if there are more partnerships like that, I definitely think about investing in a travel.
Especially, I think if digital payments comes about and you don't change cash, banks is where you need to make sure that all the things are being done when you travel, right? So it's very interrelated. So we're coming to the end soon. Time is running out. So what we're going to do is a Monday morning advice, right? So after the entire event in WiT, on Monday, when the audience go back to their office and they cannot remember anything that we talk about, what is one piece of advice that you will give to them if they don't remember any of the things except your piece of advice? Start with you.
Okay, first thing that comes into my mind, make one international, very small value, cross-border transaction on crypto, and tell me if that's not going to change the world.
Okay. Chee?
For me, is payments is at the background. Every one of us pay, although I don't like to pay myself, I like somebody else to pay for me. But be intentional when you are paying, because you are the customer. You are the one who is making the payment. So be intentional and know when you are doing the payments, what is your experience like? That will be your customer's experience as well.
Yeah, I would just say that make payments part of your customer experience strategy. And go back on Monday and find out how much friction you have today in your payment flow that's leaving money on the table for you guys, and you'll be surprised how much money you're leaving on the table.
And I would just say make it really easy. In our world, it's a very stressful activity, just because there's so many times you are paying. in terms of the journey. So the easier you make it, the more customers you're going to get, and the better off you'll be.
Easier for the customers, not the fraudsters.
With that, we're going to close our panel. Thank you.